I feel like it wasn't that long ago we were talking about distros cleaning up the last of the Python 2 packages. Python 2 is a project that held on for a very long time because a lot of things relied on it because there wasn't really a proper migration strategy, and Python 2 and Python 3 are basically not the same language, so it wasn't exactly an easy migration, and by the end of it, basically the only thing that was left was GIMP 2 because of the plugin system that needed it. But GIMP 3 was basically right around the corner, and it's out now, and it's not a problem anymore. Plus, you could use GIMP in the Flatpak, and then you would have Python, and it wouldn't be an issue. So at least for that, it wasn't exactly crucial to keep it around. There are a few other things hanging on, but a lot of those things probably could have been pushed out anyway. But when it comes to GIMP, there was another version 2 that project was using. And now that we have GIMP 3, and now this is no longer the case, this package is also being pulled from Arch Linux, or I guess has been pulled from Arch Linux, that being the GTK2 framework. But unlike Python 2, there wasn't as dedicated of a push to get rid of it, right? Like Python 2, initially there wasn't a good migration strategy and there wasn't that much of a push, but towards the end there was. But with GTK2, it's in a very different state. There are people that are still actively using GTK2 and still swear by it. There are forks of GTK2 and it's a very different situation. So unlike with Python 2, there has been a bit of collateral damage. This was announced over on the Arch Linux mailing list. Remove GTK2 from the official repos. This was announced on October 23rd, but things have kind of been continuing on since then. I think we've reached the point where we can remove very old GTK2 packages from the official repositories. I recently dropped the GTK2 version of LXDE, and there are only a few applications left that still depend on GTK2. Now, there are a bunch of GTK2 applications in the GTK2 version of LXDE, so those are not going to be on this list, but those are obviously included. And speaking of LXDE, there actually was one confirmed case of someone affected by this. Maybe there could have been others, but there was someone who complained about it over on Reddit. Why did Arch replace LXDE with LXDE GTK3? My desktop was working fine with GTK2, and it went all a mess after an upgrade. I even checked if the testing repository was enabled. I had to recompile all of these things. Can we get the GTK2 packages for fallback? Also, VTE vanished. I am using Pack Builder otherwise. I don't know what Pack Builder is. Yeah. That wasn't going to happen. I think with LXDE, that is present within the AUR, so you can always go and use the AUR packages if you desperately want the GTK2 version. Now, for some of these tools, it makes perfect sense why it would still be on GTK2. This one here, literally has GTK2 in its name. This is likely something related to GIMP 2, obviously makes a lot of sense. But a lot of the tools on this list are just really old X11 tools that nobody really uses, nobody's developed in a very long time, and I think most people have just forgotten exist. One example being SBXKB. It's basically a tray indicator thing for X11. Another being Xboard. This is a GNU chess implementation that I'm sure there's somebody out there that, why is that appearing? Bitwarden, what are you doing? I'm sure somebody still uses this though. Other tools like Xdialog is basically a simple tool for generating a dialogue. Xlockmore is a X11 screen locker, but most people that want a screen locker usually just use X Screensaver. Frankly, I didn't know any others existed. Up the top here with AllTray, this is another system tray related application. Nowadays, if you want to make use of something similar, there's things like, I think K-Tray? Something along those lines, which basically does everything this does, but for KDE, obviously. But there may be some tools in here you actually recognize. So one of those being right about here, Mono tools. And Mono probably rings a bell. Mono as in that other version of the .NET framework? Yes, actually exactly that. So Mono Tools is basically a collection of testing and development tools for Mono. Another one, Nitrogen. Nitrogen I have used very extensively, and it's kinda sad to see it removed from the main repos. This was a really popular wallpaper selector for X11, and if you made use of a window manager like Awesome or DWM or i3, you very likely used this if you were using it, 5 or so years ago. Obviously, this is not leaving a gap in the market when it comes to setting a wallpaper on X11. There's a million different tools to do so, but I use Nitrogen a lot. I believe this was the first wallpaper setter I was using when I started using i3, so it still has a special place in my heart. There's a lot of coverage about this tool. For a very long time, this was incredibly popular, but now it's gone from the repos. And if you're an IRC fan, there's one name in here you probably spotted. HexChat. So if we go to the website is still available because it's posted on GitHub.io, but HexChat was a relatively popular IRC client. But that's just not really the case anymore. Maybe it's still being used, but it's not being developed anymore. So about a year ago, the project was marked as read-only, the project was archived, and it wasn't just done with no sort of announcement. If we go to the news tab, there was an announcement of the final release. Basically, it hadn't really been maintained for a long time, and nobody else wanted to help out, and basically, it's like an IRC client, and it was a fork of another client, and there's just not really that much interest in IRC at this point. So there's not that much interest in supporting a project like this, or just helping out with a project like this. Now, as these packages basically still did function, most of these have been moved over to the AUR. So if any of these you do happen to be using, whether it be HexChat, whether it be Nitrogen, whether it be anything else that happens to be on this list, if you need it, the AUR is where you're going to look. Now, I have noticed that not all of them are being transferred over, so there may be things missing. If that's the case, you will have to probably go and compile it yourself and, I don't know, maybe go and run the AUR package yourself, but for the most part, you should be fine. And for the most part, most of you probably aren't using any of these tools. I could certainly see Nitrogen still being in use if you're using an X11 window manager, but a lot of these other ones, probably not. Except for the guy running the GTK2 version of LXDE. And if that isn't good enough and you're still very into GTK2, if you go over to Artix, they will be keeping the GTK2 stuff around, so there is that. At least for the time being, there may come a point sometime in the future where the packages break and it can't be done, but at least for now, at least for the notable ones, they will reside in their repos, so yeah, basically. But of course, they're not going to be actively supported, and if you want to, help out with them, you can do that, because even in Artix, they're not that crazy. They're not that crazy to try and just, fork old GTK2 projects and take on all of that maintenance burden when nobody else wants to do so. And if you want to get involved with that, they also have a forum thread about doing this GTK2 change as well, so keep that in mind. But there is one semi-maintained project still using GTK2. That is Calf. So if we go down just here, Calf Studio Gear is an audio plugin pack for LV2 and Jack environments under Linux operating systems. The suite contains lots of effects, delay, modulation, signal processing, filters, equalizers, dynamics, distortion, and mastering effects, instruments, SF2 player, organ simulator, and monophonic synthesizer, and tools, analyzer, mono stereo tools, crossovers. Calf Studio Gear aims for a professional audience. Basically, bunch of audio nerd, audio calibration effect sort of stuff. And a few weeks ago, this issue was made on the Arch Linux GitLab for the package of calf. Why has the GUI been disabled? Why did you remove the GUI with this commit here? That is a fundamental part of calf. The GTK2 GUI plugin still run properly, and its own external host wrapper, calf jack host, that is now missing as well. If possible, I would like to have it back, and the commit actually did say why it was removed, because of the GTK2 dependency, because of all of the stuff going on with this. And the GTK2 stuff is not a newly known problem. This was reported to the project about a year ago. Have you in plan change GUI from GTK to other like Juice or something cross-platform? That's a mess of a title. Basically, with Ardor 8.4, it wouldn't work with calf plugins because it was using GTK2 and the version was too old to be supported. With one of the devs at the time saying, those problems were basically in sight a couple of years ago. That's why I started CTK as a replacement for GTK2. Basic stuff already works. A fair? Is that a word? I don't think it's a word. Maybe it's a word. Things like compositing, layering, event bubbling, clipped region redraw, and the like, still a long way to go. After CTK is done, calf needs to adapt to the new toolkit, since it has grown into this huge pile of devices, and still suffers from a few design flaws UI-wise, e.g. direct access between UI and DSP needed. It's nothing to be done on a Sunday evening, but more like an effort of several man-months. And throughout this thread, a whole bunch of workarounds were listed, things you can do in the meantime, all this good stuff. But at the end of the day, well, you gotta do something, because otherwise, even though this project is actively being developed, GTK2, it's not just dead in Arch. This has been a problem since, can I find the comment? Yeah. Since at least Ubuntu 2004 LTS, and it's possible that other distros were dropping it earlier, so yeah. You gotta do something if you want your project to even remotely have a place on Linux at this point. So GTK2 came out in 2002. It was only a matter of time until this was going to happen. And with all this going on, with these packages finally being pulled, that completes the to-do list that has been open since December of 2020. This is about the GTK2 EOL, and now with that, everything has been marked as completed, everything has been dropped. And there was quite a few other packages that were dropped quite a while ago, but there were just a couple of little ones that still held on and still need to be dealt with. But no more. No more GTK2 in the main repos. If you want to use it, well, there's still the AUR, so you can always, do that. But let me know, were there any GTK2 packages you still had on your system? If you did, I would like to know why. If you didn't, well, you're in the majority of people. But I want to know your thoughts down below. Yeah, if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe Starly Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and this had to happen eventually.
Like this.